Somewhere in the heart of a city that never sleeps, in a small apartment bathed in the cool blue glow of a laptop screen, sits a man named Elias. If you saw him on the street, you would think he had everything under control. He is 34, sharp-eyed, and possesses a mind that moves faster than most people's hands. But if you were to walk into his home, you would see a different story. You would see the skeletal remains of a life lived in fragments. There, on the kitchen table, is a half-finished manuscript for a novel that promised to change his life. In the corner of the room sits a dusty guitar with only 3 strings, bought during a month of intense musical obsession that vanished as quickly as it arrived. There are language apps on his phone with streaks that ended 3 years ago. There are business plans in his desk drawer that never saw the light of a boardroom. Elias is a chronic starter. He is a master of the honeymoon phase of creation. He is addicted to the rush of the beginning, the spark of the new, and the intoxicating perfume of potential. But as soon as the spark fades and the heavy lifting begins, Elias vanishes. He is a ghost in his own life, haunted by the versions of himself that he never allowed to reach maturity. He is not lazy. He is not unintelligent. He is simply trapped in the psychological valley where dreams go to die. We all know an Elias. Perhaps if you are being honest with yourself as you listen to this, you are Elias. You know the feeling of a new idea hitting you like a lightning bolt. It feels like this is finally the one. This is the project that will redefine your career, your body, or your soul. For the first week, you are a titan. You stay up late. You talk about it to anyone who will listen, and the world feels bright. But then, the friction starts. The initial dopamine hit wears off. The work becomes repetitive. The obstacles become real instead of theoretical. Suddenly, a new idea appears on the horizon, shining brighter and cleaner than the one you are currently struggling with. And so, you drop the old for the new, convincing yourself that you are being pivotally smart rather than habitually weak. This is the loop of the unfinished. It is a psychological prison that feels like freedom because you are always starting. But it is actually a slow-motion tragedy because you are never arriving. To understand why Elias and why we do this, we have to look at the master of the craft. Let us travel away from the neon of the city and into the quiet, cedar-scented workshop of a man named Silas. Silas is a restorer of ancient clocks. He deals with mechanisms that are hundreds of years old, tiny gears that require a steady hand and a mind that can inhabit the silence. One day, Elias, broken by his latest failure to finish a graphic novel, comes to Silas. He doesn't want to learn about clocks. He wants to know how a human being stays committed to a single, tiny, frustrating object for months at a time without losing their mind. He asks Silas how he avoids the temptation to just start something else when a gear won't fit or a spring snaps. Silas doesn't look up from his eyepiece. He tells Elias that the problem isn't the clock. The problem is that Elias thinks the finish line is the goal. He explains that most people are in love with the trophy, but the trophy is just a piece of metal. The true craft is in the middle. The true craft is in the moment when you want to quit, but you pick up the screwdriver anyway. Silas tells him a story about the great cathedrals of Europe. He describes the stonemasons who spent their entire lives carving a single pillar or a single gargoyle on a roof that they would never live to see finished. These men didn't have the dopamine of a finished product. They didn't have the instant gratification of a social media post. They had the stone, they had the chisel, and they had the next 3 inches of rock in front of them. He tells Elias that finishing is not a heroic act of will that happens at the end of a journey. Finishing is 1,000 tiny, boring decisions made every single day. It is the decision to show up when you are tired, when you are bored, and when you are certain that what you are making is terrible. Silas calls this the rule of the sacred 10. He tells Elias that for the next 30 days, he is not allowed to think about his novel. He is not allowed to think about the ending. He is only allowed to touch his work for 10 minutes. But he must do it every single day, without exception. even if he only stares at the page and writes a single sentence. Elias goes home, and the first 3 days are easy. 10 minutes is nothing. He feels a sense of superiority over the task. But on day 7, he has a bad day at work. He is exhausted. He has a headache. He looks at his manuscript and feels a physical revulsion. This is where the old Elias would have turned on the television or started researching a new hobby. But he remembers the quiet voice of Silas. He remembers the stonemasons. He sits down. He sets a timer. For 10 minutes, he struggles. He writes 3 sentences that he hates. When the timer dings, he stops. He feels no joy. He feels no inspiration. But as he walks to bed, a strange new sensation begins to grow in his chest. It isn't the hot, flickering fire of inspiration. It is something colder, harder, and much more powerful. It is the feeling of integrity. He realizes that for the first time in years, he kept the promise to himself. As the weeks progress, the psychological landscape begins to shift. Elias begins to understand that his brain has been wired to seek novelty, and novelty is the enemy of mastery. We live in a world designed to keep us in a state of perpetual starting. Every scroll of a feed, every new notification, is an invitation to abandon the current moment for something new. Our brains are being trained to be shallow, but finishing requires depth. It requires a descent into the dark water, where things are not always exciting. Silas calls this the wilderness. Every project has a wilderness. It is the period after the excitement has died, but before the result is visible. Most people live their entire lives on the edge of the wilderness, never venturing deep enough to find the treasure hidden in the center. They stay on the shore where it is safe and sunny, starting new fires, but never building a home. By day 20, Elias finds that the 10 minutes often turns into an hour, not because he is inspired, but because the friction of starting has been removed. The hardest part of any task is not the work itself, but the transition from doing nothing to doing something. By committing to just 10 minutes, Elias tricked his brain into bypassing the fear of the giant task. He found that once his hands were moving, his mind followed. He began to see his manuscript not as a mountain he had to climb, but as a series of small, manageable stones he had to lay. He stopped looking at the peak and started looking at his feet. This is the secret of the high achievers that the world doesn't see. We see the athlete on the podium, but we don't see the 4 a.m. runs in the rain when their legs felt like lead. We see the author with the bestseller, but we don't see the years of writing through grief, through boredom, and through the crushing weight of self-doubt. Toward the end of the 30 days, something miraculous happens. Elias finishes a chapter, then another. He realizes that the quality of his work in the wilderness was actually higher than the work he did during the honeymoon phase. When he was excited, he was sloppy. He was rushing toward the finish. But when he was bored and committed, he was precise. He was forced to rely on technique and discipline rather than the whims of his emotions. He returns to Silas's workshop, not with a finished book, but with a finished habit. Silas looks at him and smiles, knowing that the clocks were never the point. The point was the man. The point was the realization that we are not defined by our potential, but by our completions. A mediocre poem that is finished is infinitely more valuable to the world than a masterpiece that exists only in your head. Think about the things you have left behind. Think about the instruments, the languages, the businesses, and the relationships that you walked away from because the wilderness became too quiet or too dark. Understand that the feeling of wanting to quit is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is actually a sign that you have reached the place where the real work begins. It is a gate. On the other side of that gate is the person you were always meant to be. But you cannot fly over the gate. You have to walk through it, one boring, disciplined step at a time. You have to be willing to be the carpenter who carves the spoon when he wants to build a castle. You have to be willing to be the man who writes one sentence when he wants to write a library. If you are listening to this, I want you to look around your room. I want you to find that one thing that has been staring at you, making you feel guilty, making you feel like a failure. I want you to forgive yourself for leaving it. But then, I want you to pick it up. I want you to commit right now to the 10 minutes, not for the result, not for the praise, but for the sake of your own soul. You deserve to know what it feels like to stand at the end of something. You deserve to know the version of yourself that doesn't quit. Because the man who can finish one small, unimportant thing is the only man who can eventually change the world. The world is full of starters. The world is starving for finishers. Be the one who stays in the room when everyone else has gone home. Be the one who sees the wood until the spoon is the only thing left. The journey of Elias is the journey of every human heart. We are all caught between the urge to expand and the urge to hide. We are all afraid that if we finish, we will be judged, or that we will find out we aren't finished. But the ending is never truly the end. It is simply the floor upon which you build the next level of your life. Every completed project is a brick in the foundation of your character. And once that foundation is solid, you will find that you no longer fear the wilderness. You will welcome it. You will walk into the silence with your tools in your hand, knowing that you have the power to bring something out of nothing. You are not a person who can't finish. You are a person who is still learning the rhythm of the long game. If this story resonated with you, if you felt the weight of unfinished dreams, then you are in the right place. We explore the depths of human psychology and the stories that shape our reality. To continue this journey with us and unlock the potential of your own mind, please subscribe to Deep Mind. Together, we will learn not just how to dream, but how to arrive.